Imagine standing in a room filled with 52 people. Friends, relatives, neighbors. Only for your own mother to point at you and tear you down with words sharp enough to cut through your soul. That day, I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I did something that changed everything. I walked out. And when I returned, nothing would ever be the same again. My name is Daniel, and if you've ever been betrayed by the very person who was supposed to protect you, you'll understand the ache in my story. For as long as I can remember, my mother, Clara, had a talent. Not for kindness, not for comfort, but for cutting me down when the world was already hard enough. To her, humiliation wasn't an accident. It was a weapon. Still, I stayed quiet. I stayed respectful. She was my mom, after all. I believed one day she'd soften. One day she'd finally see me not as a disappointment but as her son worth being proud of. That day never came. Instead, it all exploded at an event I'll never forget. It was my cousin's engagement dinner, hosted at our family hall. 52 people filled the room. Extended relatives, old friends, even our neighbors. Everyone dressed their best, laughter bubbling in the air, music playing faintly in the background. I tried to keep my head low, blending into the crowd. But when you're Clara's son, blending in isn't an option. She made sure of that. Halfway through the dinner, while everyone was gathered in the hall, she stood up with her glass in hand. "I want to say a few words," she announced, smiling sweetly. All eyes turned toward her. And then, with that same smile still plastered across her face, she pointed at me. "This boy," she said loudly, "is the biggest embarrassment I've ever known." The room froze. My chest caved in. She continued, her voice sharp, every word slicing deeper. She mocked my job struggles, compared me to my successful cousins, laughed about my failed attempts to start a business. She even told them how she thought I would end up living in her basement forever. People shifted awkwardly. Some chuckled nervously. Others avoided eye contact altogether. But no one spoke up. 52 witnesses. 52 silent faces. And me, standing there as my own mother tore me apart. I wanted to vanish. My fists trembled, my throat tightened, but I forced myself to stay still. If I said anything, it would only feed her. So I did the only thing left. I walked out. The cold night air hit my face as I stepped outside. I could still hear her laughter echoing behind me, followed by whispers and murmurs. My heart hammered, my eyes burned, but beneath the shame, something else stirred. It wasn't weakness. It wasn't defeat. It was resolve. Because that night, as I walked away from the humiliation, I swore to myself, this story wouldn't end with me broken. No. This was just the beginning. The night air was sharp, biting at my skin, but nothing stung worse than the echo of my mother's voice in my head. Biggest embarrassment. Never good enough. Failure. Her words replayed like a cruel recording, each one heavier than the last. I walked down the empty street outside the hall, my shoes hitting the pavement harder than I realized. My chest felt tight, as though the weight of 52 eyes still pressed against me, judging, mocking, pitying. I wanted to scream. To break something. To demand why my own mother found joy in tearing me apart in front of everyone I knew. But instead, I let the anger burn quietly inside. A fire too dangerous to let out yet, but too powerful to ignore. 4 years, humiliation had been Clara's favorite trick. She'd scold me in grocery stores for buying the wrong bread, insult me in front of relatives for earning too little, even laugh at me in front of her friends for dressing like a nobody. But tonight was different. Tonight wasn't just a jab. It was a public execution. And that meant something inside me had snapped. I stopped in front of a cafe window, catching my reflection. My shoulders slumped, tie crooked, eyes glassy. I barely recognized the man staring back. Was this who I really was? The disappointment she had painted me to be? No. Because deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't worthless. I was underestimated. My struggles didn't mean failure. They meant I was still climbing. And maybe my mother had just given me the push I needed to stop begging for her approval and start building my own revenge. So I pulled out my phone. My hands shook as I scrolled through my contacts. Not for her. Not for any of the relatives still sitting inside pretending not to hear her cruelty. I searched for the people who had seen me differently. The mentor who once told me I had potential, the client who respected my work, the small circle of friends who never judged me. I wasn't going back inside that hall. Not tonight. Tonight, I would vanish from their gossip-filled stares. But when I returned, it would be on my terms. My phone buzzed with a reply from one of those contacts. A man named Victor, a real estate investor I had once done small design work for. His message was short but powerful. We should meet. I may have an opportunity for you. And just like that, the ember inside me caught fire. They thought humiliating me was the end of my story. They thought I'd crawl back, broken and silent, like always. But they had no idea they had just lit the fuse of something much bigger. I turned away from the cafe window, stood straighter, and whispered to myself. If they wanted to see a failure, they'll soon see the man who walks out and never comes back the same. The following morning, the house was unusually quiet. My mother moved around the kitchen humming, as if last night's humiliation had been nothing more than a casual joke. But I could see it in her eyes. She was satisfied. She thought she'd reminded everyone that I was beneath her, that I was nothing. I didn't confront her. I didn't even look her way. Instead, I grabbed my coat, my laptop bag, and left without a word. Silence, I realized, was the sharpest weapon. She mistook it for defeat. But in reality, it was preparation. I headed straight to the cafe downtown, where Victor had asked me to meet. He was already seated by the window, his expensive suit and confident posture making him stand out instantly. As I approached, he smiled. "Daniel," he said warmly, shaking my hand. "You disappeared after the last project. I figured you'd moved on." "Not exactly," I admitted, sitting across from him. "Life got complicated." He leaned forward. "Well, maybe it's time to uncomplicate it. I've got a property development project starting soon. It's ambitious, high-end apartments in the city. I remember your design work. You have the vision I need. Are you interested?" For a moment, I just stared at him. My heart pounded. This wasn't just work. It was a chance. A chance to step out of the shadow of my mother's words and prove to the world, and to myself, that I was far more than the embarrassment she painted me to be. "I'm interested," I said firmly. Victor grinned. "Good. Then let's get started." Walking out of that cafe, I felt something I hadn't in years. Power. Not because the deal was done, but because for the first time, my path forward wasn't tied to seeking my mother's approval. Meanwhile, back at home, I knew she was already retelling the story of my humiliation to anyone who would listen. She thought she had buried me once and for all. But what she didn't realize was simple. Last night wasn't my end. It was my rebirth. And very soon, she'd learn that the sun she mocked in front of 52 people was about to rise higher than she ever imagined. For weeks, I buried myself in work with Victor's team. Long nights, endless sketches, site visits. I poured every ounce of energy into the project. Each brick we planned, each design I refined, felt like I was rebuilding myself piece by piece. And slowly, something incredible happened. Investors started noticing my work. My ideas weren't just being accepted, they were being celebrated. For the first time, I wasn't Clara's son, the disappointment. I was Daniel Carter, the architect with vision. But back home? My mother hadn't changed. She strutted around our neighborhood telling anyone who'd listen how I had stormed out like a child at the engagement party. She laughed about how I was probably hiding from shame. She thought silence meant defeat. She thought absence meant weakness. What she didn't know was that while she spread her poison, my name was already being whispered in different circles, by people who mattered, by people with power. One evening, after a long meeting, Victor clapped me on the shoulder. "Daniel, you don't realize it yet, but you're becoming the face of this project. People respect you. You've got something they can't ignore." I smiled faintly, a mix of pride and disbelief swelling inside me. My mother's words still echoed sometimes, but now they were fading, drowned out by something stronger. Because the truth was, I wasn't just rising. I was preparing for something bigger. And when the right moment came, I wouldn't just walk back into that hall of 52 faces. I'd make sure every single one of them, especially her, saw the sun she tried to bury standing taller than ever. 2 months passed, and my life began shifting in ways I hadn't dared to dream. The project with Victor had gone from sketches on a table to full-blown development. Investors were excited, the media had started sniffing around, and for the first time, My name was being spoken in places my mother could never silence. The turning point came on a Thursday night. Victor called me, his voice buzzing with energy. Daniel, clear your schedule. Tomorrow night, there's a gala. Our investors, city officials, the press. You're not just attending. You're presenting. You've earned this spotlight. I froze. The boy who had been mocked in front of 52 people was about to stand before hundreds. The next evening, dressed in a crisp suit, I walked into the grand ballroom. Chandeliers glittered above, cameras flashed, conversations hummed. My heart pounded, but when Victor introduced me as the brilliant mind behind our city's most ambitious project, applause erupted. As I stepped onto the stage for a moment, I remembered my mother's voice. You'll never amount to anything. But then, I looked at the audience. Faces filled with respect, eyes focused on me, not as a failure, but as a leader. I spoke with clarity, confidence, passion. I painted the vision of our project. Homes that would change the skyline, designs that combined beauty and strength. Every word felt like a stone laid on top of the wall I was building between myself and my mother's cruelty. When I finished, the room roared with applause. Reporters rushed forward, investors shook my hand, and people I had once only dreamed of meeting treated me as an equal. That night, for the first time in my life, I felt what pride truly was. Not borrowed pride, not conditional pride, but my own. And of course, news travels fast. The very next morning, I walked into the kitchen at home. My mother sat at the table with her coffee, her phone buzzing with messages. Her face was pale, eyes wide. She looked up at me as if she'd seen a ghost. I knew what had happened. Someone from last night's gala, maybe a relative, maybe a neighbor, had sent her the news articles. Daniel, she said quietly, almost choking on my name. You were on the front page. I shrugged casually, hiding the storm of emotions beneath. Yes. I guess people finally see me differently. She tried to smile, but it faltered. For the first time, there was no mockery in her eyes. No smugness. Just silence. It was a silence worth more than any applause. Because in that silence, I saw her power over me crumble. But this was just the beginning. Because the boy she humiliated in front of 52 people wasn't just back. He was rising higher than she could ever reach. The days after the gala felt surreal. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, investors, even distant relatives who had once ignored me now wanted to be associated with my name. But there was one call I knew I couldn't avoid. It came from my aunt, who whispered almost gleefully, Daniel, your mother has been telling everyone she's the reason for your success. That she pushed you to greatness. My jaw tightened. Clara, my mother, had twisted the story again. She wanted to take credit for the very success she had tried to bury. So when the next family gathering came, a dinner with nearly the same 52 people who had witnessed my humiliation, I made sure to attend. The room went silent when I walked in. Some whispered, others smiled nervously. My mother, dressed in her finest, greeted me with an overly sweet smile. There's my successful son, she said loudly, making sure everyone heard. All thanks to a mother's tough love, right? I didn't flinch. I stood tall, let the silence stretch, then spoke clearly, my voice cutting through the room. No. My success is not because of you. It's in spite of you. Gasps rippled through the hall. My mother's smile froze, her eyes narrowing, but I pressed on. Every insult, every humiliation, every time you told me I was worthless. You thought you were breaking me. But all you did was forge me into someone stronger than your words. I didn't rise because of your love. I rose because I walked away from it. The room was silent. 52 pairs of eyes now saw her. Not me in shame. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one humiliated. The silence after my words was louder than any applause I'd ever heard. Every single person in that hall, the same 52 who had once watched me crumble, now stared at my mother, waiting for her reaction. Her face flushed crimson, her lips trembling as she tried to form words. Daniel, you don't mean that, she stammered, forcing a brittle laugh. It was only ever tough love. You wouldn't be here without me. But no one was smiling with her. The laughter she had once commanded had vanished. I stepped forward, my voice steady, sharp. No, Mom. I'm here because I stopped listening to you. Because I stopped letting you convince me I was nothing. My success is mine, And mine alone. Gasps echoed. My mother's hands shook. She glanced desperately around the room, searching for an ally, but found only eyes filled with judgment. Even her closest friends looked away, ashamed. I pulled out my phone, holding it up. Do you want to know what real support looks like? These are the messages from my team, my investors, people who believe in me. People who lifted me up when you tore me down. That is family. The crowd murmured in agreement. My mother's mask finally cracked. She sank into her chair, her pride collapsing in front of everyone. I straightened my jacket, turned to the room, and smiled. You all saw her humiliate me once. Tonight, you've seen the truth. And let this be clear. No one, not even my own mother, gets to decide my worth again. Applause erupted. Not nervous, not forced. Real. For me. As I walked out of the hall, the same doors I had once fled through in shame now felt like gates of victory. The cold night air hit me again, but this time it carried no sting. It felt like freedom. Behind me, whispers grew louder, about her cruelty, about my strength, about the tables finally turning. And for once, she was the one drowning in the silence of humiliation. I didn't look back. Not because I was afraid, but because I no longer needed to. For the first time in my life, I wasn't walking away defeated. I was walking away whole. And the boy who had been humiliated in front of 52 people was gone forever. In his place stood a man no one could tear down again. The end.